Okay, welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. We're gonna discuss something that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Please stop conducting PRISMA reviews. Let's talk about evidence synthesis standards. So just a quick rundown of today's agenda. I'll tell you a little bit about me so you can understand why I'm even qualified to discuss this. I'll set the stage by bringing up a couple of assumptions I have of your background and knowledge, hopefully. We'll do a little exercise, go through some definitions and examples, discuss appropriate use of the reporting versus conducting standards, and then I'll go through about 4 slides of different standards by discipline and give some kind of suggestions or ways that I help keep them all straight because there are a lot of them. And of course, you'll have the option to scan a QR code to get a copy of the slides and access to a resource document I made that has all of the standards that I'll be discussing here today. So a little about me. My name is Esmeralda Rogers. I'm an evidence review and synthesis librarian at Texas A&M Medical Sciences Library. So that just means that I get to work on reviews full time. All kinds of reviews, co-authorship level, so systematic scoping, mapping. I don't think I've done an umbrella review yet, but to give you an idea of my volume, I probably have 3 to 5 going on simultaneously at any given moment. And in the past year, I've done at least 20. I've helped with at least 20, maybe a little more. Prior to that, I was a health sciences liaison at the University of Texas at Tyler. They really got me started in reviews. Their nursing department was really hungry for that kind of work, and that's where I realized I really enjoy this type of work and guiding teams through it. So here we are today. So to set the stage, I do want to mention that I love scholarly snippets because they provide quick, actionable content. The drawback is that I can't spend a lot of time on background. So I want to start by setting the stage with a few things I'm assuming we all know. First, when I say evidence synthesis, I'm using that as a broad term for any comprehensive, unbiased study of studies following rigorous methodology and transparent reporting. That's going to include your systematic scoping, umbrella, mapping, integrated with kind of on the fence, but basically all different kinds of reviews. Second, I'm throwing around PRISMA from the very beginning, which is on my title slide. So I am assuming you know this as the systematic review and meta-analysis reporting checklist. It also has a set of extensions that explain to you how to report all kinds of things like scoping reviews, searches, protocols, a lot. There are definitely other reporting standards, but this is the one we hear about the most. So I would like to start with a little exercise. It looks like you can see this, which is great. Yesterday, it gave me a white screen. So if you will scan this QR code, or if you're in a browser, go to slido.com. At the top, you'll see like a big blue box where you can put in this number 2452536. And while everybody's trying to access, I guess I'll just kind of read to you. So we see statements like these in journals every day, but which one is correct? Number one, this systematic review and meta-analysis was conducted in accordance with the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analyses, or PRISMA guidelines. Number two, y'all are killing it. There's only 4 so far, and I wish I had blinded the scoring. Anyway, so the review's conduct was guided by the JBI methodology for mixed methods systematic review, and the review's reporting was guided by PRISMA guidelines. Or number 3, the PRISMA checklist guided data collection and reporting. So I'm going to give it maybe 10 more seconds for votes to come through. And then we just kind of are where we are. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I see a vast majority selected number 2, and that is wonderful because that is correct. So congratulations, but please don't leave. I promise I will still have some useful content for you. So it is appropriate because they differentiate between the conducting standard that was used and the reporting standard that was used. The last statement, number 3, I mean, it's a little bit tricky because yes, PRISMA guides reporting, so that part of it is correct. And one can argue that it contains enough detail about the data collection process and data items potentially to guide data collection. But strictly speaking, you should not be using PRISMA to guide your data collection. And statement number 1 is a problem I'm really trying to address here today. PRISMA is probably the guideline we hear about the most when doing reviews, and it's a great reporting checklist. I'm not knocking that, but it is not a conducting guideline. Oh, that was a screenshot because I was so scared of that not working. So let's move on. Okay, so there are some common misconceptions, and not something I completely understood when I first started doing the reviews. But a reporting standard really provides the guidance and specifications for how to report your methods of your review. And the conducting standard actually tells you like how to do it. It's guidance for carrying it out. My analogy, think of a conducting standard as an assembly manual. So they are expert vetted instructions that tell you exactly how to put the pieces together so the shelf doesn't collapse. Reporting standards like PRISMA they're more like the parts list on the front of the instructions. They help you verify that you have 12 screws, 2 side panels, and so on. You know what parts will be needed, but this doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know how to put them together correctly. Both standards have been tested by authors or panels of experts who have determined the best way to proceed for transparency and reproducibility in reporting, or for rigor and bias reduction in conducting. And despite the clear difference, we constantly see published reviews that cite PRISMA as a conducting guideline or don't mention conducting guidelines at all. And this can be tricky because it's not so much that you're supposed to use the conducting standard first and then move over to your reporting standard to figure out how to write it all up. These really work in harmony. Your reporting standards, if you kind of take a look at it from the beginning, it gives you a great idea of what you're getting into. Your conducting standard, as I keep mentioning, tells you exactly how to do it. I threw this together right quick this morning. It just kind of popped into my head. So that's why there's a lot of words, and I apologize. But to further illustrate the differences, the PRISMA 2020 statement, when it comes to search strategy, this is all it says. Present your full search strategies for all databases, registers, websites, include your filters and limits used. For the record, there's a PRISMA extension that will tell you exactly what about your search to report. It's minimum standards, but as far as the search strategy, this is all that PRISMA 2020 says. If you go to your JBI conducting standard, the JBI manual, it actually tells you, and Cochrane, they give you a better idea of what to actually do. So JBI says include literature in all languages, seek out gray literature to counter publication bias. It gives you a 3-step process for searching. So your exploratory search identifies seed references from which you harvest keywords and subject headings. After that, you're supposed to build your comprehensive search using those harvested terms. And you translate that comprehensive search across databases. And your supplementary searching includes hand searching of journals, citation searching, things like that. Cochrane also tells you to avoid filters. They specify which databases to search. Embase, I'll note that in parentheses, they do have if available, because not everybody has it. And they tell you to search trials, graylit, reference lists, use controlled vocabulary and keywords, and they tell you to get your search strategies peer reviewed before final execution. So, I mean, you can see the difference right here. Prisma's like, do this, report this, make sure you're like talking about that. but JBI and Cochrane and all the other standards give you a much more in-depth process. So I want to share a snapshot from a recent project of mine that provides some context. So I wasn't looking for this specifically at the time, but the data I found pretty well illustrates the scale of the misconception we're discussing today. Try not to get into the weeds about what the project was actually about. Just know that we searched for systematic reviews that mentioned a librarian or informationist, thinking, hopefully that would be more rigorous. And we limited from 2023 to current. We took the first 50 results and uploaded them into Covidence for screening. Ended up excluding 46, but of those, 37 were excluded because they did not mention a methodology or a conducting standard. So some only mentioned PRISMA, some didn't mention anything at all. And of the 4 studies that we ended up with, 2 very clearly and properly stated that they were using JBI conducting standards. One was a little fuzzy, but we were getting kind of desperate for studies at that point. They said the search adhered to the Cochrane handbook, but that's really all they said about methodology. And one stated prospect methodology, which is something else entirely. So I understand this is a small, focused snapshot from a specific project, but here's another example. Fleming and colleagues published a study entitled Blinded by PRISMA, our systematic reviewers focusing on PRISMA and ignoring other guidelines. So it is from 2014, it's a little bit older. But basically they wanted to know, how often do researchers actually use the right guidelines, and why are they so frequently getting it wrong? So they found that tools for assessing methodological quality and other reporting guidelines are underutilized compared to PRISMA, and this has negative implications for the quality of reviews. And finally, if you go to the PRISMA statement itself, their explanation and elaboration paper, they straight up tell you PRISMA 2020 is not intended to guide systematic review conduct. There are plenty of other resources available for that. They specifically mention the Cochrane Handbook, the Handbook of Research Synthesis and Meta-Analysis by Cooper and Hedges, and a standard for reviews and meta-analyses of observational studies by Deckers and Company. But they do mention familiarity with PRISMA 2020 is useful when planning and conducting reviews. And I absolutely agree with this. When a team comes to me, yes, I will talk to them about conducting standards, but I always show them this PRISMA checklist as well, really, so they have a good idea of what they're getting into. Like, they will see all the components and hopefully get a clearer picture of what they're taking on. All right, so let's get into the actual standards. I've got 4 slides. I organize them into 4 categories. There's a lot of different ways you can do this, and this is just this was my take on it. If the titles are pretty obvious, like what subject areas they talk about, I'm going to gloss right over them. So these general and clinical foundations, I would call them the heavy hitters that apply to most systematic reviews in the health sciences. You've got Cochrane, of course. The Cooper and Hedges standard is really geared towards psychology, education, and social sciences. The JBI manual goes over a lot of different types of systematic reviews. They do scoping reviews and umbrella reviews as well in health and social sciences. And this SR of SRs, that's for umbrella reviews or a review of reviews. And for reporting, of course, you've got PRISMA and all of its extensions. And just as a reminder, you will have access to a resource document with all of these in there. My second category, environmental and behavioral. So conducting, notice that Campbell is in both the conducting and reporting columns. Well, they address both the conduct and reporting of systematic reviews with this focus on social and behavioral policy relevant evidence. Roses is for reviews and systematic maps on environmental topics. It can also be applied to mapping or qualitative approaches across disciplines. In education, technology, and observational, most of these speak for themselves in the title. I will say the craft is for qualitative research in education. And finally, under scoping and mapping, so that LeVac study really expands on the RCN O'Malley framework, which is really considered a foundational resource for scoping reviews. The Campbell evidence gap map. So EGMs describe the evidence landscape and identify research gaps. So there's a standard for that, of course. And the software engineering one, just notice that it's repeated on this because it's a mapping review, but it also fell under technology. So there's just a quick listing, really, of definitely not all, but a lot of standards that are available to you depending on what kind of review you are doing. So with all of these standards, plus more that I didn't even mention, how in the world do we keep all of this straight? So something I recently have started doing is using AI to say organized, more specifically, Google Notebook LM. It is freely available to all Google account holders. Essentially, I upload a PDF of the standard, like the JBI manual. I have a notebook for that, or the article. There's usually like a relevant article for each standard. So I'd upload a PDF into Google Notebook. It gives me a summary, and I can ask questions. So it's an interactive guide, is what I'm calling it. And there's this tiny little pin icon. It's easy to miss, but if you click on that pin, it saves your notebook, so you can get to it in the future and just get in there and ask questions. On the right, it's just a screenshot of how my notebooks are organized. Notice that I've got a naming convention to make it really obvious that it's the standard. I don't necessarily put in the title of the standard. I make sure it's descriptive enough for me to be able to understand what it is. And this comes in handy. So let's say I've got a review team doing a review in toxicology and environmental health. They've sent me their protocol, and it says, we're not searching gray literature. We are excluding all gray literature. Well, my little spidey sense starts tingling. I know that's not quite right. And they really should include gray lit. But when I approach them with that, I would like to have something to back up my claim. So in this case, I would just go into my Google Notebook, into that toxicology environmental health standard, and type in the question, what does this document say about including gray literature in your review, or about searching gray lit? So I get answers very quickly. It tells you exactly where within the document that shows up. So it's just a really great interactive library and kind of a external brain, if you will, to help keep all of these organized. All right. That's actually all I have for you today. I promised you some resources. If you would like a document containing a list of all the standards we discussed today, scan that QR code on the left. It'll have the title, the link for access, or the article if it's a DOI. And if the title isn't obvious, then there'll be a description of what it is. And if you'd like the presentation slides, you can scan that QR code on the right. I did want to mention a lot of these standards I have used, so I just kind of knew of them, but I did use my references at the bottom, that Booth book, and Foster, who, full disclosure, is my supervisor, but I'm not under any pressure to use her resources, I promise. So I did source a lot of the standards from these two books. These two books sit on my desk. I refer to them a lot. Do we have any questions? Do we have time for questions?
Yes, we do. We have about 5 to 10 minutes. You can either put a question in the chat or feel free to unmute to ask a question. Okay.
Can you share the link here in the chat for these slides? Oh. Yeah, looks like we've got that.
Looks like somebody has shared that link.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Any additional questions? Oh, and someone put the PowerPoint link in there as well.
Awesome. Y'all are on it. Thank you.
Since there don't seem to be any specific questions, I'm putting the our survey link, which you should also get an email for in about an hour. The link to our snippets page where we will be uploading this video. And our next one, our next presentation in about almost 2 weeks, is using AI to critically appraise articles. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll give everyone one last chance to ask a question. I know we're getting some applause. I know that using that notebook LM, that looked like a really good, I'm going to steal that idea for sure.
Yeah. I'm doing a lightning talk on that.
Oh, at MLA?
Yes.
At MLA? Cool.
No, actually there's an
Oh, no.
there's an
Oh.
SEC AI conference.
Oh, SEC. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
little 5-minute
Cool.
lightning talk on that.
I was going to say, because that would definitely fit in at MLA as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone asked, how do you educate search teams about this? Tips, best practices.
About the standards, it's really it's one of the first things I bring up. So I'll get a request for assistance for review through, a LibAnswers queue or email or whatever. In our first meeting, I actually send them, I'm getting in the weeds here. I send them a thing asking about a lot of project scope and information. One of the questions on that form is what conducting standard will you be using? And they don't have to answer it, but I usually have that before our meetings. And if nothing's there, that's kind of my opening to be like, I notice you didn't mention a conducting standard. And I just want you to know that it is best practice to use one, and it's really, really helpful. Like PRISMA is going to tell you what you need, but if you're struggling to understand how to do it, your conducting standard will really help you out with that. And depending on the type of review and the subject area, like I try to be prepared with what standard might be the most appropriate to give to them in our first meeting. So that's how I handle it.
Any other questions? I've been trying to create a form for them to fill out when they have a question, when they're like, I want to do research. Like, okay, well, we need more info then. I want to do research to get started.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, oh, okay.
Do I require search protocol? You mean like a protocol for the review and registration? Yes, actually, I do. I don't require them to register. And honestly, I can get away with this because my supervisor is in full agreement. If they do not have a protocol, as you know, they don't really have a plan and they can flounder. And if they don't have a protocol, a lot of times their research question and eligibility criteria is not firm enough to be able to develop a good search. So if they don't have a protocol yet, I'll do a scoping search, just kind of a broad, something that's not going to take me forever, for them to kind of find their direction. And I do ask for them to send me a copy of the protocol, whether it's registered or not, before I will finalize their search, because otherwise they're going to have to go back and probably change it because they're going to waiver on their eligibility criteria. Slide 10. And we talk about one. Sorry, I'm going to make y'all dizzy here. This is 10, the snapshot of the standards gap. Okay. Yeah, so we were looking, this is a big thing. We'll be presenting this at MLA as well. So we are comparing AI tools. We're comparing consensus and perplexity and their ability to pull the included studies of an existing systematic review. So we were looking for a systematic review that had a librarian involved, had reporting and conducting standards, had an actual search appendix. And this is why the search was so simple. We just wanted reviews with librarian and we wanted it to be recent. And we had several hundred, of course, but we just kind of picked the top 50 to screen. And that really was the biggest barrier. Well, the biggest barriers were and it's not really reflected, only protocol, no methodology. Oh, it's not in there. But well, probably the way that we excluded the most of them was there was not a good search appendix, so we couldn't tell what the search actually was. But after that, it was no methodology. Like they just said, we use Prisma, or that one statement that I gave you an example of, like, we conducted this review using Prisma guidelines. So a lot of them refer to Prisma, but most of them didn't mention a conducting standard at all. Hopefully that answers that question. Was there a correlation between the statement and the search quality? We didn't really look at that because if they didn't have a statement, we just excluded. We didn't dig any deeper. So I can't answer that question. Sorry. And I absolutely agree with that in the chat. We're doing a mapping review of our university's output and conducting standards were vanishingly rare. Yeah, we were kind of horrified. We were thinking, wow, we should do a paper on this, but I don't know, that might exist already. I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. Any additional questions? Still have a couple minutes if we're good. I just want to see if anything pops up in the chat before oh, okay.
We have this.
All right. Well, I want to thank Esmeralda. That was definitely informative. And I'm realizing it's like, you know how to do it. So you end up forgetting that there's actually standards that you should follow and you should map to. So I appreciate the reminder that that's important. Lots of applause in the chat. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank
Bye.
you all. Bye-bye.